I like to start with this picture because if you look at this, you can, even though it's a snapshot in time, you can imagine what's going to happen here. Let's say a user who is looking at a video and hits play. What do you think is going to happen with this? Chain reaction. Chain reaction. Like, this is going to swoop down and hit this, right? That's what you usually think. It'd be kind of surprising if this actually came out at you and, you know, did some kind of change. But unfortunately, a lot of people who design for mobile might be following certain visual conventions, not realizing that they're actually setting up some expectations about how this is going to work. So that's what we're going to cover. We're going to look at some good examples and bad examples of transitions, either ones that just don't use them at all or ones that might be a little inconsistent, and then ones that do a really nice job of mapping some human kinds of movements to things that people can do in an interface and what it helps them do when it comes to orienting and navigating through. So first we're going to do, and I'll just tell you who I am. And an introduction is a transition of sorts, so you can get a feeling for who I am and what we might be talking about. So obligatory introduction slide. I'm a sci-fi geek. This was 2 Halloweens ago, actually. I'm very excited about this Halloween. And I teach user experience design at the School for Digital Craftsmanship, which is part of ADMCi here in Chicago. And I've written a couple of things with a couple of cool people, so Project Guide to UX Design and Adventures in Experience Design. Build activities out of some of those things, too. So if you're a beginner who's looking to get more of a feeling of the process, Adventures is for you. And if you're more intermediate, maybe you've been in a job for a while, you've been asked to do things like this, but you haven't had a chance to really get a full feeling of the process, a project guide is a good one to look at as well. But enough of that slide. What you really want to know when you hear an introduction is what are you going to learn about and from which perspective. So I actually came into user experience design from more of a psychology and anthropology side of things. I was really fascinated with how people think, how they work together, and how that applies to digital. So when we talk about transitions, I'll talk a lot about the human perspective and how that's actually mimicked in some of the actions that you could do. And there's a lot going on in our brain. There's a lot, but the visual that helps inform our understanding of the world around us helps draw attention to the right kinds of things, helps you immerse in what you're doing. And especially with a case of something like mobile, you have a very constrained area to do all of that. And transitions are a language for doing that that a lot of people underestimate and underuse. So this is something from, this is Walgreens design from about 15 years ago now, when there were no smartphones, obviously. And if you think about the human brain looking at this, you can see they dedicated a lot of time to just getting you to places. Like, we have all of this information. We're gonna help you navigate there. So that's navigation, that's navigation. All of this is really not necessarily about what experience do you have coming in, but how can we get you to something you probably already know. It's since obviously evolved, but what's kind of interesting about this is if you think about trying to do this on mobile as is, of course, you're going to run out of space pretty quickly. And so you would think that nobody would actually try to do this, but I don't know if anybody has Verizon. This is my Verizon app. So our first example of bad design. Is anybody here? No, I won't call you out. It's always funny when you show bad design and you wonder if there's somebody in the audience that was actually on the team. But I mean, this is just a case, again, of we have a lot of things we know people want to get to, so we're just going to give them those options. And in this case, there's also no real transition. You'll see as we walk through this, as I play this, that it'll tell you it's connecting each and every time, but it's just really kind of moving you in a linear way. So basically what I'm trying to do in this case is set up some kind of workshop or appointment here so you can see what my experience is walking through this. So basically just linear breadcrumbs all the way through. And we're going to talk about a couple of Pasquales here. This one is Pasquale da Silva from Elapath, who's got a lot of really good information about transitions. And he said breadcrumbing all the way into a view is an easy way to get lost, especially in mobile. You just don't have that ability to see anything like a sitemap to get a context of where you are. You don't want to repeat the navigation to show via tabs, where you actually are specifically either. So you're just somewhere down this linear path. If you were going to actually map this out, it would look something like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, and you can jump back to 1. But if you're in 3, or I think in our case we actually had 5, anywhere before the end or the beginning, you're pretty much unsure about where you are or when it will ever end. So this is the moment my mind was blown. Is anybody clear? This is basically a to-do list that is available as an app. And it was the situation where you realize there's so much you can do with touch interfaces. You don't have to do edit or add buttons. You can actually manipulate things more directly and create new patterns for that. So my mind was blown when I looked at this, because basically this is how you create a new item. You just spread where you want it to be, and it creates that new item for you. So you're solving so many things here. You're saying, I want to add, and I want to add it here. And it also does a nice job of collapsing and focusing you in on what you're actually adding. So, and some of this is obviously the interaction, but the reaction of the things around it, that transition from view mode to edit mode, is made really seamless. So that's not eye candy. It is the kind of thing that people will connect to and talk about word of mouth. That was when Clear came out, people were crazy about it and the way that you could interact with it, because everything was really touchable in a way that was not always intuitive, because it was a new pattern, but you had this encouragement to play and try moving things around in different ways, and it does guide you through some of that too. Antonio de Pasquale, another one, talks about animations. He talks about time and space as being aspects of animation, and then that there's passive and active kinds of animation or transitions that you can think about. So if you think about time and something more passive, that's things that happen to you to help set and transition you into something. So if you think of the beginning of a movie, it's the music, the way that it's setting up the story before you even see any actors. That's something that's more passive and time-oriented versus things that in space itself might show you a navigation, will give you an intention of how you can actually use something before you would actually act on it. So for the passive example showing setup, has anybody played Monument Valley? Out of curiosity, isn't it beautiful? It's short but beautiful. If you haven't, I highly recommend this. I'll show you at the end why this is another thing that blew my mind. But this is it's really beautiful. The design is beautiful. The sound is really beautiful. You'll be able to hear it a little bit here. And then the way that it transitions you from one level to the next is just very thoughtful. So you finish this. I'm Ida, I think, Princess Ida. And you basically have to figure out how you get up to this spot here. And I just did that for this level. So each time you do a new level, it does that. It'll move you around. So it's like you're saying you're exploring a new part of the building now. And it actually unfolds the first time you do it in this kind of almost origami kind of shape. So it's loading. It's giving you that idea that you're moving on to another level, and it's also just establishing the overall style of this game. But it's doing it somewhat passively because, again, you're just waiting for the load to happen. We're mostly going to focus on these, which are the more active pieces of it. So in time, when somebody has some kind of interaction, you want to immediately have that reaction of system feedback showing that you had some kind of effect. There's also something called user feed forward, which means that you hint at what the next action is going to be as well. And transitions are really good for doing that too. We'll look at some of those. And then you have the actual space aspect of it where you can work on objects, maybe augmented UI, and the transition allows you to transition objects from one state to the next. So let's talk about some of these things and how human behaviors can map really nicely to some of the transitions or be inspiration for some of the transitions that you could use. One of the obvious ones, and that's what my Verizon was trying to do, is the idea of stepping through something, some kind of process. And when you first look at that process, you can think about, well, the end point is important, that beginning is important, but the journey along the way is also something to consider. How are people moving through that space? does it increase their understanding of the navigation and the style and the guidelines for that particular design. So this is Duolingo, which is it's a language learning tool. Also highly recommend this one. If you want to learn Spanish, French, I think it's Portuguese, they might even have Russian up there. And it's really meant to build from one lesson to the next. So you'll see here, there's some nice display showing that this is where you're supposed to go next. You still have another lesson coming. You can get back to the past lesson. And so it uses nice, the carousel kind of approach, but it keeps it kind of simple. And the other thing that you'll notice here is the use of dominance here, that this is actually larger in the middle. And those peripheral hints give you a feeling for what's going to come up, but it also has that little bounce. So a lot of things when you deal with a carousel, you have to think of not just a single kind of regular swipe, but what happens if people do the fast, like the roulette wheel kind of swipe. And for some things, if you have a lot of content, maybe it slides everything past you. But here what they're saying, they stop you, they bounce, to show that it registers that you did that, but you can't go any further in this case, or it doesn't want you to jump all the way forward to the last lesson. It really wants you to build on each one first. So that bounce is a good use. That's a good use of bounce. Bounce is one of those things that people will add in if they want their app to be really playful, and you have to be careful about it because you can definitely overbounce. But this is a nice aspect because it tells you that you're done, or you're stopping at a certain spot. Another good example of stepping or riffling that's a really nice way to break out of the linear, horizontal linear kind of design is paper, Facebook paper. And if you haven't used this one, it does a lovely job here of having visual categories and having the second level visible here for you to browse through, riffle through. I use riffle to stand for looking at the same type of content but browsing through it quickly versus browsing through maybe lots of different categories. So you're just kind of similar layout here and can go by it pretty quickly. And this is actually pinned to your category. So basically, if you swipe here, then all of these have to do with that category. So they do a nice job of that content and category association, making it very natural, still very visual. And that pinning is a nice way to do it, as well as the fact that this is actually extending the plane. Just like Duolingo had those peripheral hints to show that there is more, that without distracting too much, this shows there is content that you can access. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Flipboard is another nice news app.
Flipboard?
Yeah, it's called Flipboard.
Okay.
But you're essentially flipping either horizontally or vertically.
Oh, fantastic.
Based on feeds, yeah.
Okay, yeah. I'll have to add that to the list. That's great. So if you were going to diagram this, you might start to do something more along these lines. These are unique. It's not part of the same flow, but this is the second one of this flow, and there's this kind of overlap here. You could also diagram using a little bit more of a 3D effect if you want to show planes. I'll show you a good image of that in a moment here, too. I mentioned riffling, so let's look at a couple other examples of that. So beautiful app, Yahoo Weather. This uses crowdsourced images of cities. And one of the things that's really nice about this, if you're kind of a travel junkie like me or you have family in other places, you're going to have multiple cities. And so this lets you go through those cities. And it uses this really nice subtle parallax effect. Now, parallax is one of those things that can also get overused, but this is a nice version of it. So parallax basically means there are different planes. That they call it z-space. So you have x, y, and then the depth aspect. You mimic having panels. And in this case, there's this line here that moves a little bit more quickly than the rest. So it looks almost like you're standing in a building and you're looking through windows, and each window is a different city. So a really nice transition that it does very subtly, and using parallax and z-space specifically. We'll come back to this one too. Other good things here. So there's an article called The Z-Axis Designing for the Future by Ren Lanier, and she talks about this, the fact that you have multiple panels now. And this is something that you could prototype with index cards. You could sketch on index cards and move them around and get a feeling for how your app is going to orient people. This is from Gmail. So you've got your categories as a bottom panel, and then your actual emails And then other aspects here, including this is more of a pop-up that's on top. So having those in your mind as you're designing will help you stay consistent with what people might expect. And the nice thing here with Gmail is that they actually have it's the hamburger menu, which I don't know if you love or hate the hamburger menu, but if you use it everywhere, just keep in mind that it does not usually test very well. People don't really know what it means. They don't tend to click on it except so that they've gotten to the point of frustration. So if you really have something important, don't hide it in a hamburger menu. But in this case, if you touch that, it basically slides the panel open. And you can see some apps will put the navigation panel over on top from the left, but then it would cover this. If this panel came over like this, you wouldn't actually see what could be some important information about those emails. So they did a nice job of saying, we'll slide it this way, and that way you can keep the information that you might be needing here at the same time that you can see some of your categories. Maintaining context, very important in mobile, again, because otherwise you start to feel lost. But doing that in a way that doesn't crowd the screen too much. And this also is a nice, again, this is extending off into this invisible space. So Z-space and layering here as well. And you can start to think about it. This is 0, the panel. It's not really part of where you're starting right away. And then you have this view that you can drill into for a specific item. So another example of riffling on Vine, and I think Vine was one of the first ones to do this well. I don't know if Facebook added that idea that as you're scrolling, things will start to play automatically. So you don't even have to keep hitting play. Just saved that additional touch each time. Makes it addictive to start watching some of these things because you can just scroll forever, kind of like Pinterest.
Are you feeling hungry? Do you want to taste and have a little nibble on my burger face? What?
So it helps you. It kind of gives that feeling of anticipation because you're not, you're going down there. You don't know what you're going to get. Burger face, kids blowing out candles, and it does a nice job of shifting your attention. One thing finishes, the next thing automatically starts playing for you, and it's very economical in that. Let's talk about glancing. So think of I like the idea of you playing cards. You want to see everybody else's face, but you want to look down. You don't want to study too much, but you want to kind of find out what those tells are when you're playing cards. And so that space coming up from below is a really good one if there's situations where you need to refer to information and you need maybe just one little piece of data or some kind of system response, but you don't want to lose that context again. So this is actually a fairly old app. But it's one that I get addicted to when I am traveling, and it's something that encourages lateral thinking puzzles that present something here, and usually it's 2 people, and one person will ask a yes or no question, and the other person who has the answer just gives yes or no, and you have to try to figure out the riddle of what's happened. Does anybody know this one? I won't give it away. This one's called Out of the Box, and there are a couple of them. So you're looking at this riddle, and the wording is really important here, because there's little tricks to the wording. How many people want to know the answer? No. Okay. No, not enough people. But I'll just say that there's one particular word in here that's very important to play on. So you want to be looking at some of those things when you see the hints from down here. And so it just does this nice, if you hit one of those hints, it actually mimics the hand coming up with a little clue. This is a nice way to get you in the middle here and slowly open up what's happening here in our cabin, locked from the inside, perched on the side of the mountain. So again, you're maintaining context, and you're using that position in a way that feels very natural. Duolingo obviously thinks that I'm a crazy cat lady because it had me actually write that I have 13 cats. But this is a good example of how they use glancing. So I've basically, it gives me the yo tengo tres gatos, and I have to write the translation of that. And then every time I check, it gives me feedback of whether I got that right or wrong. So this one's a little flippy because it does move the keyboard down. But notice how the message came up from the bottom, so you can see what you got right. And then it's taking you to the next lesson with a page swipe, so that you get this feeling of, okay, you're here, this is your reaction, and now we're moving on to something else. Nice, subtle, doesn't take too long. the book fits with the whole idea that you're learning something like you might in a classroom. So it does a nice job switching your attention and doing it in a way that feels natural. Pivoting. Okay, so this is another situation where context is important. It's the idea that you're working on something and you want to keep one foot in the thing that you're doing, but you need to go refer to something else that might be fairly complex, so it's not just like a status, a feedback coming up from the bottom. But you need to be able to, you want that comfort of knowing that you can get back to where you were before. And so Google, in general, does pivoting well here, I think. You have some results here, and you want to visit one of those, and you see that there's the panel that slides over. Another thing you'll notice, another good use of bounce, is that it bounces a little bit on both sides, which basically says to the user, you can manipulate me. There are a few things that do that. The bounce does it, and then you've got those that there, and the fact that there's kind of this overlap, and the fact that it's a tab in the first place gives you an idea that you can grab onto something. So those visual hints do a really nice job. But the bounce just really brings it kind of encourages, oh, this is loose somehow. This is something I can grab. Maintaining the context, knowing that you can go back and try something else out, giving you a feeling of control. So bounce, good bounce number 2. So that's feed forward. When I mentioned feed forward earlier, it is that idea that the transition tells you what can happen next if you would like it to. Okay, so the next one's drilling into detail, but I had to show this as an example of what not to do. If you ever weld, please do not do this, not just because you're putting something flammable up on your face, but you actually need the darkened helmet in order to keep yourself from going blind. So glasses, they're not going to cut it. But I thought that was also a really interesting metaphor for this because it basically, it's not just this front piece that needs to be protected, it's the fact that there's glare from all these other things, of the sparks here bouncing off of other things too, that can also cause damage to your vision. So when you drill into detail, you really want to kind of mimic that idea that you're really focusing in, you're starting to focus out distractions, and you want people to start paying attention to data in more detail and let the rest of it kind of fade away. So back to our Yahoo weather app example, this does a really nice job of drilling you into detail. So here I am. I've gotten the most important things up here, mostly cloudy, 48 degrees, my low, my high. But now if you want to see the details of this, you can start to swipe up from the bottom. And notice what happens here. There's a few really nice things going on here. It literally is almost like you're putting your head down, like you're getting your really nose to the grindstone. What are some of the things you notice happening?
Blurring in the background.
Yeah. Not just blurring now. What else is it doing?
Slight movement.
Yeah, it's blurring and it's also darkening if you look at the color. Yeah, and then the movement coming up. So yeah, and then there's actually a darker panel, even more, where there's even more data going on, and you no longer can swipe left and right. So it's keeping you in that moment. So again, it does a nice job of switching your attention. It's like this is coming up again. You're pulling it up like a paper, and it's also something called staging, and the fact that you have that data that you want to really give prominence. Like it's the main actor on the stage right now.
iCloud does this too.
iCloud?
Yeah, iCloud,
Oh, okay.
the web-based version, does that too.
Oh, okay. Fantastic. Yeah, it's really beautiful. So gradual blur and darkening there really helps with that. So I'm going to use this next time I get sick at home, and there's nobody that can bring me my chicken soup or something like that. This is Instacart, and they do a really nice job of moving you from the gallery into the detail. So here's a gallery page. You can see, I don't know what I searched for. Maybe it's just popular things, healthy. And I've decided I'm going to drill into detail on Sabra roasted red pepper hummus. So notice a few things here, and then just go ahead and call out things that you might be noticing happening. What do you find interesting about this? Anyone? Uh-huh.
There's a pretty interesting data toggle where it changes the name of the item, fixes it into the header.
Yeah. So if you think about what is it that there are two major things. One is continuity, and the other is location, making sure you know where your location is, right? And this does a really nice job of saying we want to pin that up at the top. It needs to be prominent at first so that you know you went to the right place. But then as you start scrolling, we don't want to take up all of this room or have it go completely off the page. So we're going to resize it down and pin it right in between this area here that's already set aside because of the close button and the favorite button. So continuity there. The other nice decision here was from the gallery page, we're going to have the item that you clicked on, the picture of it move up. But then once you start scrolling, you don't really need that anymore, right? You're really focusing down here. So we're going to maximize the space by having that kind of fade away. And then when you want to return, you have that information.
Is important because that provides the context to the content. Otherwise, sometimes you forget what you're looking at, especially if you look at several products.
Right.
You might not.
What's the difference
forget.
between this?
And I also like you have that star, which is not, you can favorite it, I suppose, right?
Yeah.
So you can actually flag it.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, and it's a fairly simple idea, but it's the first time I had seen that kind of pinning at the top and that use of space in your detail area. So again, maintaining context, very important, but maximizing that space as much as possible. And when you get into details, there's usually a lot of stuff on there, so they've kept it pretty simple using tabs. So yeah, some of the techniques of fading, moving objects around to provide that continuity, pinning and sizing.
I'll do a Buster.
Buster. How many people use Buster? Okay. Oh, no, fewer than I thought. How many people use any app? How many people take the bus? Okay. How many people use some kind of app that follows the tracking, GPS tracking? Okay. If you did not just raise your hand the second time, but you did the first time, get one of these things. It changes your life to know when buses are coming. I don't think anybody did, but I won't call you out. But anyway, this is an app that can show the line. You can favorite your connections, your favorite lines and stops where you pick them up. And so here I've got Belmont and Sheffield heading west. And if it turns out that that's the one right by my house, sometimes I want to head east. So you can basically click on this, and it'll flip the card for you. Which is a pretty natural use of flip. Now, flip, again, is one of those that gets overused a lot, I think. So, but this is one of those cases where it really makes sense because you're likely to have the need to see both of these at some point. And because that way you also don't have to worry about favoriting both of these. You can pick one and just flip it as you need it. So strong associations of paired information is really the key for that. All right, so immersing, throwing yourself in. So drilling into detail is still very task-based, but if you're going to have to do a few things in a certain space, there's some nice ways to do that. I'm a huge believer in this principle from psychology, which is flow. Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, say that 5 times fast, did a 20-year study of happiness and gave people, now this was a while ago, gave them beepers, and would beep them at random times. I don't think it was 3 in the morning, but different kinds of times, and basically asked them 2 questions. What are you doing, and how are you feeling? And he was interested in finding out when we are at our happiest. So first, there were 2 things that were kind of tied for first. One was when you're spending time with your friends. Not necessarily your family. Depends on your family relationship. But you tend to choose your friends, so you tend to be happy when you're with them, which is why you spend time with them. But the other thing that was interesting was that he found people were really happy when they were in these moments that he called flow moments, which are when you were really trying to address a certain challenge, and it's that right mix, that right kind of challenge for your skill level. It's not too easy, because then you'd be bored, and it's not too hard, because then you get anxious. But when people are doing those things, they feel really alive, they feel engaged, they feel like they're becoming more complex as people. So a lot of educational courses and things try to figure out how to get you into flow. So do games. Games really want to get you in flow, keep, like Plants vs. Zombies. They just kept playing that through. That wasn't eating. It was crazy because they did such a, what's the next plant going to be? So they really focus on getting you in there, but it does require that you immerse, that you start really putting your attention into this, because some of the characteristics of flow are that you lose track of time, you feel like you're fully engaged, and that sounds very different from what you tend to have in a mobile phone, right? Mobile phones are really about distraction a lot of the time. If you're using it when you're waiting for the bus, you're flipping over to see your email, you're getting texts from people. But back to our, I think, third and I believe last example from Duolingo, you can never anticipate that somebody's going to stick with it, but one thing that they do that's nice, that gives that feeling of, okay, you're entering a space right now. This kind of space where you're going to ideally devote some more of your attention and finish through chunks of these lessons. And they do it visually by having kind of a tunneling effect. So you'll see, I think I picked numbers here. I'm seeing all of my lessons. So now I have this color shift that did come out at me. And I see the lessons that we saw before. And then when I pick start, you're going to see another color shift saying, okay, now I'm entering the lesson. So it tunnels, it zooms, it gets you feeling like you're entering in a nice way. And it also is a good description of where you are kind of navigationally. You're no longer at categories. Now you're in the topic. And it does it with things like the sizing, the zoom, the way that the color shifts so that you can tell that you've made a major change. All nice ways to communicate that. Back to Facebook Paper, the immersion aspect. So we were looking at categories and then items, but once you decide to choose one of those items, it does a nice job of saying, again, here you go, you are entering this space, and you know that they're going to spend some time actually reading this. So it has this card here, and as you open that card, you can notice a few things. I don't know if you can tell, but there's this light line around here, so it shows it's an object you can interact with. It has that visual hint. And it does the open, there's a little bit of that paper in the middle, open, and then all of a sudden everything else goes away, and it's just about you reading that item. But the other thing is, this is, again, feed forward. Because it moved up and out, you have a bit of a hint that if you want to close this, you can actually swipe down for it to go back. And one other thing that is interesting here is that they have a character, they have a style to their transitions. So you notice it a little bit here. Everything goes a little bit it overshoots a little bit, and then it retracts. And you can see it specifically, that dip when the paper opens, but watch when this goes up. It kind of goes up and down a little bit. And then when you see this again, you'll see it kind of goes down and up. So that there's a style to their interaction that makes it feel a little bit more playful. It's funny, the first version that they had a lot more bounce, and they really toned it down a little bit, but they still kept that characteristic overshoot. So some of those techniques here, skeuomorphism. You guys know what that term is? A few people don't. Okay. So skeuomorphism is one of those hotly debated things in design. It's how closely should something that you design that's digital tie to something that is real world. So in this case, there's a bit of skeuomorphism that it looks like a paper opening up. And I think that it tends to get, people give it a hard time because they don't want features to be held back by having to look like something that you would interact with in the real world.
There's also haptics. Because haptics is the study of the physics.
The physics and the touch
of the real
response.
World in terms of, this is the way things actually act in the real world.
Right.
And then how do they have a digital equivalent?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that I think a lot of people, I had a hard time, I still do, with trying to type on my smartphone because I'm so used to that haptic response of a keyboard, feeling the physical side of it, feeling the give, and there's a lot of people that are trying to figure out, well, maybe there's like a little buzz or something like that that shows that you've actually touched the key. So that would be an interesting thing to explore there, too. But yeah, skeuomorphism, I think a good example of skeuomorphism that people hated was the fact that iBooks looked like it had a big bookshelf, and so you'd have the titles, all the books look like they're on the bookshelf, and that takes up so much space. But in some cases, it makes sense sometimes because you do have a metaphor then that people can grab onto that helps them understand how this is going to work. Again, with this opening up like a paper, it gives you a feeling like it could fold back. And if you were going to diagram this one, before we had 1 and 2, but there's actually kind of the hidden 3 in that. So again, you're not getting in this linear. It is a process that's more vertical, but because everything feels associated with the things above it, it feels more natural. Toggling or changing things. Let's talk about that a little bit here. So there's a lot of little things that you can do, and I mentioned style before, or character, that you could express the style and playfulness of your app through transitions. This is from Tumblr, and if you look at everybody see the heart here on the right? So if you touch that, you could see, like with a favorite, you have the outline, and then you touch it, and it fills in, and it just is a fast kind of fill-in. But Tumblr basically said, can we add something to this? So we're going to make it a heart. We're not going to make it a star. And look what happens when you touch the heart. Aww. Aww. So there's like a little sense of humor in that playfulness. It's just a few seconds. It's the kind of thing that, if you are trying to come up with this and there's a lot of effort going into things, people might say, we're going to cut that. We don't have time to do that. But those little moments are some of the things that really, again, express the character of what you're creating and get people to love what you create. So plan for those delightful things that don't get in the way of what the user's trying to do, but like kind of make them feel happy in the way that you're using it. Or slightly sad for the heart being broken. So yeah, it expresses that feedback that the change has happened in the first place while expressing some personality. Back to clear. One of the nice things that about clear with changing as well. One is that as you're changing, did you notice what happens in this space as I'm? So basically, it's giving help text right in the moment as you're doing it. So it says spread to create item and then release to create item is what that's, or pinch apart and then release. So the instructions are right there. And the other thing that's nice, it's hard to see here a little bit, but it says connect Mary Kay with Lakshmi. So basically, it's still giving you that context of what is the next thing in your list. So maybe what you're writing is you realize, oh, you know what, I need to do this before I do X. It's nice to have the context of what's coming up next as you're writing that to make sure you're writing a really good to-do for yourself. So that switching from view to edit, that help text, and that ability to keep that context as you're working is a really nice use of these transitions. This was has anybody used Mailbox? A few people. Okay. This is one of those things that you could see being a little hard to get used to, but it's brilliant. And do you use it regularly? The guys who raised your hands. How do you feel about this? I'll show it here.
Pretty awesome.
Have you gotten used to it? Okay, great. So basically, the whole idea is help me get to 0. Get your inbox to 0. And so they want to make it really easy for you to just get this list down. So you have actually a few different swipe motions that you'll see here. If you swipe to the right quickly, then it's kind of like, yep, I saw it, and it kind of archives it for you. If you swipe to the right and kind of lag it a bit, it basically says, I want to delete it. So you'll see, let's see where that one is. Got these looping. Okay, so there's my green, my fast green. I'll tell you what those are in a minute here. And now you're going to see the slower red. Right there. And the color shift and the symbol change, too, because you don't want to just rely everything on color, because there are a lot of people who are colorblind. 10% of men, by the way, some kind of colorblindness. So that's these motions are, I'm getting rid of it, and either you're getting rid of it for archive or you're deleting. And then anything to the left is, this is going somewhere. And if this one is actually, you want to have a to-do, I want to read this later, I want to watch this later, you can choose those. Or here, you can actually set a time to be for this to show back up in your list. So if you're somebody who kind of uses your email as a to-do list, but you want to get this down now, that's a nice way to make sure it pops back up for you.
Yeah, Google just announced Inbox. That's going to be a competitor to this. So a lot of this is now being integrated.
Yeah.
It's going to replace Gmail with Inbox.
Okay.
Which will be very mobile focused.
Okay.
So it's a beta right now.
Oh, okay. Interesting. And they're using the swipe kind of
exactly.
modality?
Oh, yeah. And you can put them in different categories and stuff like that.
Yeah. Interesting. Do I see a hand in the back?
I was just going to comment that it's not supposed to replace Gmail. It's supposed to replace your personal email.
Yeah. Well, that is for me. Cool. Color shifting, yes, we talked about. Okay, so some suggestions if you are going to integrate some transitions into things that you're creating. One is you can be pretty subtle with this and have a big impact on that. I just thought this was kind of funny when iOS 7 came out that there was this, people said they were getting sick because of it, and I think part of it was because there were a lot of cases of over bouncing and over zooming, and you can really do a lot with just a little bit there. This seems to have gone away. I'm not sure how much of it is just people getting used to it and how much is because the exaggeration has been toned down. But you get love-hate relationships with things when they are really in your face. I actually liked this, but I think a lot of people thought it was cheesy. I liked it because I like the idea that when you're in Passbook, if you're deleting something and it's something financial, you want that feeling of, no, this is gone, which there's nothing quite as satisfying as shredding something in that situation. And so this little transition takes that very literally. So there's schemorphism at its best. So some people love it, some people hate it. I think somebody spent a lot of time making this animation happen. So you can be subtle, be mindful of what people are trying to accomplish. Cognitively and visually, what could you be using? Like I mentioned, the glancing aspect, things like that, so that you want to stay pretty natural and still also express your sense of style. Being consistent. So I mentioned the zooming ball. This is kind of one of the things I had in mind. This is the NYPD app, so you can see who's wanted and other things like that. If you click on the eye in the upper right, you get a flip. It's not quite a card, so it's a little odd. But then when you go back, it just slides. So it just, again, it just seemed like somebody was like, I want to try the flip transition, and now I'm bored with it. So do try to be consistent, because again, that'll make people feel like they understand the space. And you can be playful, especially if it's playtime. I mean, I get down on bounce a lot, but bounce is, a good use for some playfulness, especially if you actually are playing a game. So this is Dots, which is fairly addictive, again, because it's got a nice sound, and I don't think I do a good win state here. Oh, that's the new state. But see, all of the elements have a little bit of bounce to it because it's called bounce, or it's called Dots, but bounce is like a big core part of its design. If you're in doubt, think of voice and tone, what's appropriate here. This MailChimp is amazing. They've put this voiceandtone.com site out there. Highly recommend taking a look at it. And because part of what they do here is they give you types of content and then give you information about Freddie is the chimp, the MailChimp chimp. And he has certain jokes, and so this gets into what kinds of jokes are appropriate. They're not useful. They're not meant to be useful, the jokes. But they're meant to just surprise people and delight them and express some of the playfulness. But here, this is when people are doing something, where they're ready to be joked with. But then as you go down on the content types, down to some of this changes from green to orange to red. And so this is that failure message. No joking here. Just be very straightforward. So this is a good thing to think of also when you are thinking about transitions, because if somebody's in the middle of your little heart is going to be annoying to them, they really want to resolve what they're doing. Last thought from Ren around this, also a suggestion, is to think about, I liked how she said, think about the menu as a piece of content in and of itself, and not just another kind of interface element that needs to happen, like a necessary evil. It can actually be an opportunity for surprise and delight. So if you could push it, if you could do something that's actually related to the content somehow, think of some of the ways that you could try your own gestures out for that. Some tools, so we just talked about how you could use index cards, so paper prototypes if you want to concept and sketch, hand sketching things, physically acting out the motion in some ways. And then if you are somebody who knows some of these tools, or you're lucky that you know somebody who does, you can actually prototype some of these things in After Effects, Adobe Edge, moving into code. And if you're trying to explain the motion more specifically, then you're going to want to get into actual interactive examples and product storytelling. So how that storytelling would get into the kinds of motions and experience you're trying to display through motion. Some other areas of inspiration. This is a really great site for learning about animation in general and transitions. It's ui-transitions.com, Johan Tanolo. And he has little animated versions of each of the different techniques that he talks about. Very much in detail, and a good read when you're ready to immerse in something. I mentioned the two Pasquale. Sorry if I'm massacring the Italian here. So both these guys are good to keep. Actually, Antonio did a talk at Interaction, and that was in Amsterdam recently, and it's available online. The video of it is, so that's a good way to get into some of the animation techniques that he talks about. I also like to collect verbs. So start collecting interesting verbs that you think could inspire you. Here's an example of kind of a shiver, what might come from a shiver when you have the wrong password. You may have seen this. I have a love-hate relationship with it. I think it's kind of cool, but on the other hand, it feels like you just got shocked with. I just want a zzz kind of sound to go with that. But it's just kind of interesting to think about, maybe some subtle things like a little bit of sizzle, or starting to get into more in your face. What would lumber look like? When would you use that? To redonkulous, like shatter, rocket, explode. So again, you can be very judicious with your use of that depending on what you're creating. So I want to leave with one final challenge, and again, this is from Monument Valley. And this is the moment where, this is the very first level, and it was kind of like, oh, that's what kind of game this is going to be. So again, this is Princess Ida. You're trying to get her up here, and it doesn't, you basically poke something here, and she walks to it, but it doesn't look like there's any way to get up there. So it doesn't give you any kinds of instructions or anything like that, so you just have to start playing with things. And then this is the particular moment that blew my mind. Basically, it's Escher-based navigation. And my challenge is, if anybody in here ends up developing an app that uses Escher-based navigation for something that's not a game, I would really love to see it. Please let me know. I'll give you a free book. But that's the challenge overall. If you want access to these slides, it doesn't have the video, but if you want to take a look at some of those human motions and some examples, I'll leave this up here, the link to the slideshare, so you can get those as well. Any questions, comments, other favorite apps that people wanted to bring up that this might have reminded you of?
I'm struggling a little bit to wrap my head around how we design for immersion, especially in an app. Because to a certain extent, immersion happens on the side of the user.
It does, yeah.
So how do you predict that? How do you design?
I think it's mostly about realizing what moments are going to require more immersion, and then making sure that your visual hints say, okay, you are entering that space right now. So you're right. You never know. Even with those, people are going to turn off the phone, but if you know that they're about to move into reading or they're about to move into skill development, you're going to want to somehow mark that moment in the visual and the fact that you're transitioning into that mental space. Yeah, but yeah, you never know, especially with mobile.
I'm curious about how some of these techniques get tested. Do you have any insight into, you mentioned the hamburger menu, but that's not really even an animation. That's
the burger face?
Right.
You mean the video?
Well, no, the hamburger menu.
Oh, the hamburger menu, not the actual hamburger. Okay, yes. Right. I must be getting hungry.
No, I'm not sure that was probably tested. But some of these, the way you describe these things, they work really well for the functionality that they're designed for.
Yeah.
Have you ever been into the process where they were testing those things? Have you seen things that didn't work? guess.
Yeah, I mean, you'll hear, I don't know where to go next. I'm not sure. So usability testing in general, you do that the same way that you would with anything. Usually if they have the information they need, but they feel it seems like they're poking around a lot, they're going into different areas, or they're not quite sure what response just happened, then those are good questions that warrant thinking about a transition. I'd also say doing like a customer journey for what they're trying to do, what steps, what are they trying to accomplish right now, and seeing if your transition can evoke some of that, and then people will generally respond positively to that.
Yeah, building upon that, I think it'd probably be good to do a task analysis, essentially, of the application, and then determining how you can use this notion of transitions within the task to amplify the meaning of the task in some way.
Right.
I guess I have one question about trial and error and exploring, because some patterns are so widespread that people sort of understand the meaning of them, in terms of some of the things that you show. Others aren't.
Right.
They may be very unique. So what role does trial and error play, because it's all about gesture?
Trial and error in, you mean on the part of the user?
Yeah, exactly.
Like trying to play with something and then wanting to revert back?
Well, not necessarily play. They're trying to learn the metaphor, and maybe some of the visual cues may not be correct, or they may not be intuitive to that particular user. So I think we all have a certain amount of trial and error whenever we use applications.
Right.
Especially the first time we download it.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to figure out what role that plays in this.
Yeah, I think feed forward, that concept is very helpful for that, because it says, oh, I could try that. It gives you hints of what you could try next. And you can de-emphasize the things that aren't really high impact. But I think when I think of trial and error, I always think of undo. And there's a lot with mobile, I think, that's less about committing things. So I think that idea that you can play with, make sure you allow people to play with things without destructive consequences in mobile, because if you did actually, that's why I was worried about the mailbox example of like, oh, I was a little bit, but now it's, so anybody who is it that, those who have mailbox, have you accidentally deleted, did you accidentally delete stuff that you wanted to keep, and is there a resolution?
Really, because you swipe all the way to the end of the screen, so I vote often than not actually end up archiving stuff rather than deleting.
Yeah.
The swipe motion.
Okay. So that's the thing that's just a little bit, I feel like my favorite thing for that trial and error idea actually is I love Gmail's undo. And I think that idea of you just have a few seconds where you can be like, that's your oh shit moment, sorry. That you can say, well, I didn't mean to do that. And I think I could see, especially the more you would rely on gesture, like more precise definitions of a gesture to do certain things, you might need that immediate undo button. And it doesn't have to be created, because undo is really tough for development. Usually the questions you have are, how many states are you going to remember, and how do you know where you are in the undo, and what happens if you hit the last state? But that concept of just giving you a few seconds to say, no, that's not what I meant to do, and just undo the last thing, and then remove that state as soon as you move on to the next, I think would be really... I haven't seen that done on a mobile device like that, but that's another good challenge if anybody wants to put that in. Just let me know you did. Well, nothing else? Oh, one more.
Question about prototyping. I know I've seen that slide before, which goes from low fidelity to high fidelity prototyping. What do you use for prototyping?
For prototyping, I will either use the index cards, or I'll get into Balsamic or Acture generally. Keynote has nice, for transitions, Keynote has some really nice transition functionality. I would actually say that it might be one of the best tools out there. I think InVision does it too, of letting you actually mimic transitions without having to know how to code or use something like After Effects or something like that. So I would definitely say play with Keynote's transitions if you want to do prototypes of some fairly